Okay, so today we're here with State Representative Sherman Mack in Albany, Louisiana at his law office. Representative Mack, thank you very much for allowing me to interview you about your experiences in the state legislature, about the state legislative leadership. You're a committee chairman for the Criminal Justice Committee.
Okay.
So we'll be talking about your roles as an elected official, as a chairman.
Thank you, Tony. It's a pleasure to do it.
Right. So can we take time for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got involved in politics? Is your family involved in politics as well?
You know, I get asked that question a lot, and I try to remember back to when my interest in politics was first introduced, and I go back to my dad was very involved in local politics when I was a kid, and he would have different politicians, whether it be, Odom Graves, who was the sheriff here in Livingston Parish, or whether it was Frank Edwards, who was the sheriff in Tangipahoa Parish, and Eddie Larson, and Duncan Kemp, the former district attorney, Henson Moore, who was a congressman from this area, just different ones that would, he would congregate with, and he was gracious enough to let me tag along as a 10, 11-year-old kid, and I just got fascinated by it. I got, fascinated by these people who would talk about, their jobs and how they dealt with people in different situations. So I took a real interest in that as a young child. And then, just coming up, went to law school, became an attorney, started doing a lot of criminal defense, got an interest in criminal litigation, and decided that I may want to be district attorney, and so I ran for DA.
And that was in 2008?
That was in 2008. Then that was an unsuccessful campaign, but I learned a lot, and I think things happen for a reason. We learned a lot I learned probably more about politics and political campaigns in 2008 during that election than I had all the campaigns that I had volunteered for prior to that. You really don't understand what it's like to be in the political arena until you've run a campaign yourself with your name on the line. It's a lot to it. It's one of the hardest things I think anyone ever does in their life. I respect anyone who runs for public office, because it is truly, there's a lot of reward to it because you get to, your help, it's community service, you're getting to help people. But it puts a lot on you. It puts a lot on your family, it puts a lot on your friends, it puts a lot on your business. So I respect anyone. The current district attorney, the current sheriff, those guys have sacrificed a lot of time from their families and from other interests they may want to do to serve the public, and I appreciate it. And so did that in 2008. Then in 2011 was a redistricting year in the Louisiana State Legislature and Louisiana State Senate. It's reapportionment. So, every 10 years, you take your census numbers, and then your state representative and senatorial districts may shift. And they actually created a new district, I'm assuming after Katrina was the big difference. And District 95, which is the district that I serve, was originally in New Orleans. But New Orleans had lost a lot of population in the North Shore, and everything east of it had gained a lot of population. So they actually created a new state representative district, legislative district, here in Livingston Parish. It was brand new. They still deemed it as District 95. And it was basically, started the Tangipahoa Parish line, went all the way up to the St. Helena Parish line, and all the way west to Walker. And then it dipped into a little bit of Denham Springs, then curved back around to follow I-12. And so someone called me about it and said that, they've redrawn these district lines. Sherman, you really need to look at it. And I looked at it, and I saw where this district, and I looked at the numbers, the boxes when I ran for district attorney, and I had carried a majority of those boxes. So my father had ran for state representative back, I believe, in either 78 or 79. And he was a bare budget campaign. He just really was knocking on doors and kissing babies, and I remember him doing that. And so it was in my mind, and I had some people approach me about it. One of them was the current sheriff, or the former sheriff. He was the sheriff at the time, Willie Graves. and told me I need to think about it, and I did, and decided to run for that office. Ran in 2011. Had two opponents in that race. We won in the first primary, and so that's how I got elected to the state representative district in District 95. And so that's kind of how it all started.
So one of the things that we learn about in U.S. government is reapportionment. There are 435 congressmen in the country, and so when reapportionment occurs and the population increases, districts are redistricted.
Right.
But there's never more than 435 congressmen.
That's
So
right.
That's through the Permanent Reapportionment Act.
That's right.
And so in Louisiana, in the House of Representatives, there are 105
That's right.
state representatives.
There's 105, and each district represents between 40 and 45,000 people.
And then the state Senate are 37,
It's 35.
35. At what point would those bodies increase in size? You said your district's a new district. It's a new there used to be a District 95 somewhere else.
It was in New Orleans.
It was in New Orleans. But you didn't add you didn't go
They
from
didn't add
104 to
right.
105.
No, you're always going to maintain that same number of districts in the House and the same number of districts in the Senate. What will happen is those may shift. Now, what will happen is, let's say Louisiana's population booms, in the next 10 years. They're just going to take whatever number that is and divide it by 105. That's what they would do.
So have there always been 105?
I couldn't tell you that, but I think it's been 105 ever since I've been in the picture, and my dad was in the picture, and that's been a long time.
Maybe since the last state constitutional convention.
I think probably so, and I think it would take a constitutional convention to change that, and I don't see it changing. I really don't see that.
You have a brother who's also in local politics. Can you tell us about him?
My brother Shane, who's a year younger than I am. That's an interesting story because in 2011, it was those 4-year election cycles are the same as our parish election cycles. So I ran at the same time the sheriff ran, the clerk of court runs, your parish councilman runs, your parish president runs. And so my brother actually in 2011, before I was aware that the lines were going to be redrawn, was actually thinking about running for parish council, for this side of the parish. I'll be District 9. And he was gearing up to do it. And then these new legislative lines came out, and I was very interested in it. And so he and I talked about it because we were both be running for new seats. And we didn't think that both of us should be running at the same time because it's geographically, it's not a small area, but it's an area where everybody knows everyone. And we just didn't think that might not be a good idea for that time. And so, and two, we both wanted to be involved in the other's campaign. Very close family. My mother, father, my two brothers, and I can tell I'm very blessed in that sense. And they're there for me, and I try to be there for them the best I can. I hope I'm as good a brother to him as he is to me.
I'm sure.
But he wanted to be involved in my campaign. I wanted to be involved in his, and we couldn't do that if we were both running races at the same time. And so out of his love for me, and I use that term, with strong emphasis, out of his love for me, he elected not to run for parish council in 2011 and allow me to fulfill my dream and run for the state legislature. And so when I was successful at doing that, 4 years later, in 2015, he had some people approach him to run for parish council against the incumbent at the time. And I think he was hesitant. He won't admit this, but he was hesitant about doing it at first because he didn't want to really do anything to hurt me. And I had some people call me on his behalf because they were trying to talk him into running, and he was kind of putting them off because, again, he was trying to help me. And when I got this information, I called him. I said, "Why didn't you call me?" He says, "Well, I didn't want to bother you." And I said, "Well, look, I had my turn 4 years ago. It's your turn." And so he decided to run for parish council, and I didn't have any opposition in my race at that time, so I was able to get out for him and help him. And he was successful. He won that race, and I was really proud of him. And let me say this about the opponent he ran against. There were two opponents in that race, and he won the first primary. And it was a clean campaign. It was the way campaigns are supposed to be run. It was run on issues, and you know, I was proud of him, but I was also happy with his opponent, who was the incumbent, and the other challenger, because it was really about the issues. And so that was that was a race that I was happy about the outcome, obviously for my brother, but I was happy about the process because it was the way it was supposed to run.